My name is Adrian Blake, 34 years old, and for the past 3 years I'd worked in quality control at Summit Ridge Engineering, a mid-sized but ambitious firm supplying precision parts to Detroit's automotive industry. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, solving problems, streamlining systems, putting out fires before they could become infernos. 3 years of believing hard work mattered. Then, in the space of 30 seconds, all of that certainty shattered. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was walking past the break room, coffee in hand, when I heard voices inside. My manager, Victor Grant, stood with our visiting CEO, Mr. Lee, their conversation hushed but urgent. The thing was, they weren't speaking English. They were speaking Mandarin. Most people in the office would have shrugged and moved on, but not me. I'd spent 5 years living in Shanghai as a teenager when my father worked abroad for an automotive supplier. Those years gave me a fluency Victor didn't know I had, and what I heard cut deeper than anything I'd ever expected. "We're letting him go next week," Victor said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Adrian has served his purpose." My grip on the coffee cup tightened, hot liquid splashing against my fingers, but I didn't flinch. I stayed frozen in the hallway, listening. Mr. Lee nodded. "And the new hire?" "Daniel Perez," Victor replied. "Fresh graduate, sharp, willing to work for less. He'll replace Adrian without disruption. Once Adrian finishes training him, we'll eliminate the role. It will look like efficiency, nothing personal." The two men clinked their porcelain teacups together, satisfied with the neatness of their scheme. Neither of them realized I was standing just outside the door, every syllable burning into me. Neither of them realized I understood everything. I walked back to my desk in silence, set down the now cold coffee, and stared out at the factory floor humming below. Machines cut steel into intricate parts, sparks flickered under robotic arms, and workers in safety glasses moved like clockwork. My fingerprints were on half those processes. I had designed new inspection protocols that cut waste by 20%. I had introduced automation tweaks that saved the company nearly $200,000 last year. My fingerprints were everywhere. And yet, in Victor's eyes, I was already obsolete. That morning, Victor had asked me to prepare Daniel's training schedule. The outline he'd sent was comprehensive, 3 weeks covering payroll systems, vendor approval, client databases, all the hard-earned knowledge I had accumulated. It was like reading the blueprint of my own replacement. The smart move would have been to polish my resume, call recruiters, quietly line up another job. But as I sat at my desk, the memory of Victor's smug expression when he told Mr. Lee I'd be gone anchored me in place. It wasn't just betrayal. It was arrogance. The kind that assumed I'd hand over everything I knew and then walk away quietly. He had no idea who he was dealing with. That evening, I stayed late at the office. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as the building emptied. Security guards made their rounds, their footsteps echoing faintly. Alone, I opened system logs, access histories, financial reports, files most engineers never touched. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, only that my instincts told me Victor's plan to fire me was part of something much larger. As I sifted through spreadsheets, memories of my father flickered in my mind. I was 16 when I watched him come home in Vancouver with shoulders slumped, a box of his belongings in his hands. He had spent years training his replacement, convinced that loyalty would protect him. 6 months later, the company restructured and discarded him without hesitation. I had promised myself I'd never be used like that. Yet here I was, following the same pattern. Except this time, I wasn't going to roll over. At first, the discrepancies seemed small. A few invoices that didn't match vendor records. Expense reports for trips that no one recalled happening. Payroll entries that didn't align with HR notes. But the more I dug, the more the pattern emerged, carefully crafted fraud, designed to stay just below audit thresholds. Over 2 years, it added up to nearly $300,000. Victor wasn't just planning to replace me. He was covering his theft. Suddenly, everything made sense. His increased use of Mandarin around the office. His private conversations with Mr. Li. His eagerness to recruit Daniel, who also happened to be fluent in Mandarin. This wasn't just cost-cutting. It was strategy. He needed me gone before I could connect the dots. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the part of the loyal employee. By day, I trained Daniel with patience and thoroughness. By night, I became an investigator, gathering every scrap of evidence. Daniel was bright, eager to learn. He asked questions that revealed genuine curiosity, not cynicism. At first, I resented him, seeing him only as the pawn chosen to replace me. But slowly I realized he wasn't in on Victor's scheme. He admired me, trusted me, and the thought gnawed at me, Victor wasn't just stealing money. He was manipulating an entire generation of employees into believing his leadership was legitimate. During one late-night session, I traced a series of vendor invoices to shell companies registered under pseudonyms that tied back to Victor's personal accounts. The sophistication was stunning. Fake business registrations. Inflated invoices. Phantom expenses. Bonuses slipped into payroll under special project allowances. All small enough to avoid attention, but together, a mountain of fraud. By the end of the second week, I had built a damning case. The final week of Daniel's training brought Mr. Li's quarterly visit. Victor had timed everything perfectly. My termination would follow the visit, framed as a simple restructuring. I'd be thanked politely, given severance, and escorted out with a handshake. Clean. Professional. Forgettable. But Victor had miscalculated. Thursday morning, Mr. Li arrived. Victor greeted him at the door, speaking in rapid Mandarin about operational efficiency. They retreated to the conference room for what Victor had labeled strategic review. I waited half an hour, then walked in carrying a thick folder. Victor's face twisted with irritation. Adrian, we're in the middle of something important. This isn't a good time. I met Mr. Li's eyes and, in perfect Mandarin, said, "Sir, I have evidence of financial irregularities involving unauthorized vendor payments and expense manipulations. You need to see this." The room fell silent. Mr. Li's expression shifted from surprise to sharp curiosity. Victor went pale. "You speak Mandarin?" Mr. Li asked. "Fluently," I said. "I've understood every conversation you and Victor have ever had here. Including the one about firing me after I trained Daniel. Including the one about expanding Victor's authority across multiple facilities." Victor tried to cut me off, but Mr. Li held up a hand. I laid the documents on the table. Page after page of fraudulent invoices, payroll anomalies, bank account connections. The evidence was overwhelming. For an hour, the room became a courtroom. I presented my findings, Victor sputtered excuses, and Mr. Li's expression grew darker with each passing minute. Corporate attorneys and auditors were called in. Daniel was summoned and, reluctantly, confirmed that Victor had recruited him specifically for his Mandarin skills. By 2 o'clock, Victor was escorted out of the building by security. His accounts frozen. His promotion dissolved into an arrest warrant. 3 months later, Victor stood in a courtroom, pleading guilty to fraud and embezzlement. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, forced to repay the stolen funds, and left bankrupt. His reputation, gone. His ambitions, ashes. Meanwhile, Mr. Li offered me Victor's role, a management position with oversight of the quality program across multiple facilities, along with a significant raise. I accepted, but only with one condition: full transparency and strict auditing procedures. Never again would one person hold unchecked authority. 6 months later, I stood in the same conference room where I had exposed Victor, looking through the glass partition at the factory floor below. Workers moved with focus and pride, machines hummed in rhythm, and for the first time in years, the place felt honest. Fluency, I realized, wasn't just about language. It was about knowing when to listen, when to act, and when silence became complicity. And if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or cast aside, remember this: sometimes the very thing they think makes you replaceable is what makes you unstoppable. So, don't let anyone write your ending for you. Hit that subscribe button for more powerful stories like this, and drop your city or hometown in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from.